What does it take to mentor, inspire, and advocate for people at big tech companies or Fortune 500 companies, like, the acronym is um, IBM, Lenovo, Amazon, all of those amazing companies. And also, she's been at major conferences and co-authored a book on navigating change. Welcome, Shantell, to the podcast.
That was good, Jawan. You impressed me about myself. Oh, you're gonna be my new Flavor Flav when I go to those conferences. I love it. I loved every moment of it. You impressed me. I'll tell. Okay, so the answer to the question, what is it like? It is like recognizing the opportunity that exists for bringing more people like you in the room. It is a constant reminder because you look around and there are not very many people like you, and it powers your own drive to make sure that there are more of you in the room.
Hmm. That is
I
that
like
is that is so powerful.
it.
And to kind of like had that as a follow on. So, what inspired you to choose tech as the specific industry to target for the work that you're doing?
Do you get this all of the time, Jawan, that tech kind of just landed in my lap? Like I feel like it that must be the case because when I talk among my friends that are in tech, it wasn't necessarily in I graduated from high school in 1990, and so it was not necessarily a goal. What it was a I happened to be in what they call the Silicon Valley of the South, and that is Research Triangle Park, North Carolina, and they also call it the Triangle area. And I went to school here and stayed. And what happened was I needed a job. I needed a job. I was not like on it enough to strategize about what is the most popping industry. I was not there yet. I was still so I'm Joanna, I'm about to date myself, but I was at the age where you had to wait on Sundays for the Sunday newspaper to come out and look in the back for the jobs that are available. Okay, so there were not very many jobs like is on LinkedIn right now, so that you didn't get that. And then also, just the idea, I think it was more focused around your talent and your skill. As I was doing this and making choices, it was not about the industry that you wanted to impact. And a lot of times the talent and skill that you had actually was attached to an industry. And I'll tell
Mm,
you, like people who are writers, you automatically think I guess I'm going into journalism, like newspaper, television, right? You automatically were thinking like that. So I think tech is just such a wonderful industry in that it sucked up every actual skill set inside of it. And so I got lucky enough to get sucked up into tech, and I loved it. I loved it then, and I love it now. I've all of my jobs have been in tech.
you touch on a very important point that I almost want you to expand on it a little bit more, right?
Okay.
Because the thing that made me like want to advocate for tech or the opportunity that I saw was this big, just what you just described, right? This space where regardless of whatever skill you had or didn't have,
Mhm.
you could find a space that was uniquely yours. And whatever talent, you know, you can find a means of expression for it.
Mhm.
That's actually one of my next videos coming up, but I'm not going to give that away yet. So I'm going to go back to you and say, for someone who's on the outside looking in and maybe
Mhm.
had a similar misconception to the one that I had, which was you needed to know how to code to work in tech. What does that mean in the context of, your talent, whether it's
Mhm.
technical or not, could still find success in tech?
Okay, so I always have to tell people when they hear the companies that I work for, they ask me this question, especially older people in my neighborhood where I grew up. Can you fix my computer? No, I cannot. I cannot fix your computer. I cannot. And so I think there's an attachment to the word tech that makes people think that if you're not close to it, it makes you believe that you have to have that particular aptitude in order to work in tech.
Hmm.
I've never fixed a computer. I have always worked in tech. I still don't know how to fix a computer. I don't know anything about them other than the feature function benefit so that I can market and sell it.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's essentially it. So I definitely I think the misnomer all the time is that we have to fit into that one little space, but like I said, I love tech because it said that it embraced everything, everything about what it is that we are all bringing to the table because there is a department for everything in tech.
Hmm. Hmm. That is such a that is just a good way to land it. And when you talked about the skills that you had, what were those skills specifically, and where how were you able to deploy it to build a career in tech?
I had to go back way back. So I told you I was going to date myself. I knew I was going to date myself when I got on here with you, Juwan. Let me tell all the business. I graduated from high school in 1990. When I graduated, I had already had a radio show under my belt. I went to college to actually be a broadcast journalist. And after one semester, let me see, 2 years, and then one semester working at a local radio station, I was like, "Ooh, I ain't doing that." And I'm gonna tell y'all what the young. Let me tell what the young mind and how the young mind thinks. I am not doing that because nobody about to wake me up early in the morning to go on no shoot in order to do whatever in live broadcast. I thought that I was gonna get to sit at the desk like on day one. You do not get to sit at the desk on day one. You got to earn your stripes to sit at the desk, and that's what I thought. I'm like, I'm gonna sit at the desk for the 6 o'clock news. Okay, learned that in real life after interning, and I went back to school the following semester and told my advisor, I'm like, oh my goodness, I don't think I want to do this because I'm not going to be able to do it. And he said, why don't you give marketing a try? Oh my goodness. When I took my first marketing class, I was like, oh my gosh, this is my love.
Hmm.
I love marketing. I just saw my first marketing professor 2 weeks ago. I still am in contact. She's been at my wedding. I'm like, I love marketing. I love what she brought to it. I fell in love with it. I still remember the project that I created to as my final project. I love marketing. So it was marketing that was my door into tech.
Hmm.
So my first job my first real job in marketing, I had like a contract job for a little while at a small company. Well, it was a big company then, but at a company called Nortel that made telephones.
Hmm.
That was my first tech job, and it was like it was really a administrative assistant and me talking myself into like all of the people talking myself into being their marketing assistant. But my title was administrative assistant with a college degree. But my first real job was at IBM, like you talked about, and so my it was a integrated marketing strategist. I think that's what it was. And I could write. I could always write. That was something that came very easy to me, and has always come very easy to me. In high school is when I realized that I could do it. So I could always write. I could always project manage, and I could always do events. It was like I did not know that it was a thing, that it was tangible, and it could be a job. But somehow along the way, I think it was more mentors, people who
Hmm.
really were there in the mix and informed me like what these things that I have could manifest as. And
Hmm.
maybe later on in my life, I read that one time Bill Gates said that you probably at age 12 already have the thing and the interest that you actually are oriented to do.
Hmm.
Like I read that probably maybe like 7 or 8 years ago, and and now, like as I even coach my own children, it really is more around what is that thing that you do, and all of your friends know you do it, and they come to you for it. You might not know that it's a job, but what it is an innate skill set. And I think Jay Z brings it home in his book. His book is called Decoded, I think. Love that book. If people hadn't seen it yet, it's actually beautiful. It's a beautiful book, and it's a very good book and something you wouldn't necessarily expect from a rapper. But he talks about ignoring that thing that he had because he had it all the time and it was innate, and he just ignored it. And if I could help anyone who is listening to us, it really is to really think about that thing. Everywhere you go, you use it. Every person you meet, they recognize it in you.
Hmm.
It's a thing, and that is that it's innate. Jay Z's was to put words together. He could do it. I don't know if you know this about him, but he doesn't write his raps.
Hmm. Yeah, I heard that. Yeah. I think I learned it when they did God did, right? Like, because
Okay,
when I heard that record, I'm like, what is this? And
sick.
then to hear like you didn't write it, I'm like,
You
okay,
don't write it like sick.
okay.
But if we can all get anything from Jay Z, it is that thing. You just do it. It just comes from you. It just flows from you. I'm using the word flow. I just think I think we all ignore the thing that's easy, and we orient ourselves to the thing that's hard because we're working for it.
I definitely want to piggyback off what you said because I think it's so important, but many people miss it. So literally, like I'm starting this 3 to 4 part series
Mm,
because the biggest question I get from people is, "Oh, I want to get into tech. What should I do?" And I've broken it into
mm,
multiple steps. Step one is personality, and
mm,
it's one for a specific reason. That's the most important thing in what you choose. There are
mm-hmm,
people who they're natural software engineers. Like they'll chase down that problem, they'll figure out a solution. It doesn't matter if
mm-hmm,
it takes 5 days, it doesn't matter if it takes 10 days, they'll figure it out. If you're
mm-hmm,
not that kind of person and you put yourself in that position, can you find the answer? Probably yes. But would you enjoy it as much as they do?
mm.
Probably not. Would you have the strength to go the distance? Probably not. So when there's an interest mismatch in what you want to do, most likely you're not going to succeed. But even if you do, it's almost going to be an uphill battle, right?
Mhm. Yep.
Whereas, like, you could give yourself an unfair advantage in doing something that's already natural to you.
Mhm.
The,
Yes.
the average engineer is also not going to be your best salesperson.
Mhm.
Those are
Yes.
two different
That's a
skills.
good one to yes, it's a good one to compare it to. Yes, I agree.
So it's like if you know who you are,
Mhm.
even choosing what you want to do just becomes easier.
It does.
And
It
if you're then like an amalgamation of those two people, all of a sudden you become a sales engineer, right?
Mhm.
You're an engineer on one side, and then you're a
Mhm.
salesperson on one side. So knowing who you are is so important just to kind of like to add to that point. I think
Mhm.
it's very important. So go check out the book.
Mhm. Yes,
Uh
check out the
and,
book, folks.
and make sure you're playing to your strengths. Absolutely.
Yes, that's a good word. Play to your strengths. Play to your strengths. That's it. It's a good takeaway. Mhm.
So, you've had the opportunity to work at all of this, amazing companies. One of the things that's so hard for people, especially when they're starting out, is, oh, maybe let me rephrase it this way, not necessarily hard. One, people usually target right out the gate, right? To go to a fan company or a big company.
Mm-hmm.
One, is that the right strategy? I think that's the first part of the question. And then the second thing is, what does it really take to make it at a company like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What does it take? It's I have defined it as um that is high paced, like that you see that in job descriptions a lot of times with fame companies, because it is high paced. And you, I think, for thriving, and when I think about those that were always sitting next to me, those that were really willing to lean in to the fact that it is high paced, it is going to be moving, it is going to be filled with like decisions. Like you might make 17 decisions in a day, because it requires pivoting, it requires like just constant problem solving. It requires working with others in such a humongous way. The thing that you get the most done through the relationships you have. And
Hmm,
so you have to be a person who is oriented towards relationshiping in a positive way, because it moves so fast that you have to be able to depend on, oh, I'll ask Jawan, because Jawan is the one who normally gets it done, or he has this really unique view of, figuring this out. Like, so you have to, you really have to have relationships. You have to be comfortable building trusting relationships with people, because you have to let a lot of things live with other people, because there are a lot of people who specialize in different things.
hmm,
Because companies are so big, they can't afford to bring specialists on.
hmm,
And you have to be comfortable, like, birthing this baby, but handing it over to comms, to go let comms go tell everybody about how beautiful your baby is.
hmm,
So you have to, but all of that takes, I think, relationship, and that has been the thing for me that I believe that has been the most significant. um I want to say rocket fuel, I guess. Like, it's the best rocket fuel to getting things done in a high paced area, is to have solid relationships, do good work, so that people trust you, so that now it accelerates everything.
hmm,
It's if I could explain it to anybody, it's almost like your best friend, and when you call him or her, you start in the middle of the conversation. You don't have to do all of the stuff, because you already have an established rapport, an established brand,
hmm,
so you can start it in the middle of a conversation. So I say that is really key when you work in a high-paced environment, that
hmm,
you have to build relationships, because you have to start most things in the middle of the conversation, because
hmm.
it's moving so quickly.
Hmm. Yeah, that's such an important one. So to kind of like follow up, right? Because we kind of like went to what it looks like to succeed in the company.
Hmm.
But if you go from a perspective of someone who's coming from, let's say, non-technical background, they've never worked in tech, they probably even self-taught themselves to learn the skills, whether it's software engineering or something else. Is it realistic to target those companies for your first job? And what does that process look like?
Yes, I think you should, because you gain some chops. I actually got a job. I had an interview, and the when the man got down to my resume and saw that I worked at IBM, he stopped interviewing me, because with it comes its own brand. Like, oh, you thrived here? Oh, all right, come on in the door. So I actually think like having an opportunity to work at like a high paced company, because it doesn't have to be the FANG. I think at a high paced technology company, having an opportunity to do that, it comes with its own kind of boxes that has been checked.
Hmm,
I know how to pivot. I know how to operate in a high paced environment. I know how to do things that I'm creating out of thin air.
hmm,
So it's like you never even did it before. And okay, now it's been assigned to you. So I think it is its own, yeah, like, oh, she can do that, or she can thrive there, or she's worked there. All right, we'll go.
hmm,
I think you should. I really do. Like I'm hoping. So I have three sons, and two of them are already adults,
hmm,
and they work in this industry. So
hmm,
I know that it has made them gain their chops, like
hmm,
quicker out of school.
hmm. So, what are the tips, right? Because I know, like, one of the benefits of working at smaller companies is that you don't have like drawn out processes, right? Like, if you work at a like 50-person, 100-person company,
Hmm.
you might do one interview with a recruiter, and next thing you're talking to the CEO, and then you're hired.
Yeah.
Game over. But this big tech companies have like panels. In some cases, you have to go through multiple rounds. I remember like my longest interview sequence was speaking to a recruiter, speaking to the hiring leader, speaking to someone who was in the role before, and then going on a four-person panel. And it wasn't
Hmm.
like, and it wasn't, like I've forgotten what it's called, where like it's three people on the panel. No, it was back-to-back interviews.
A
So
loop,
like a
a loop.
virtual on-site, right?
Hmm.
What is the best advice for someone to navigate that who's just coming into tech and doesn't really understand? And then secondly, is like what are people looking for in these interviews, and what kind of answers should you know candidates be giving who've not been in this situation before?
I think that you should look at it as almost like like I've been chosen.
Mm,
And there is, if you think about it from boyfriend girlfriend relationships, at that point at which you get chosen, you feel like so many endorphins, like, yes, I've been chosen. I think that having an opportunity to interview, you
mm,
should remember that you've been chosen.
mm,
And that in and of itself has come with some, I can do this.
mm,
So it's like I've been chosen. Like he chose me.
mm,
And so with that being said, I think that you should launch out into this as if I've already got the stuff on paper that says I should be here.
mm,
Now I'm just going to bring it home.
mm,
So having an opportunity to interview is just having an opportunity to meet the parents. Like I love comparing jobs to boyfriend girlfriend relationship because people like get that.
mm,
So he chose you, so now you get to meet the parents.
mm,
And in meeting the parents, you're going to wear your best, outfit. You're going to be confident. You're going to have your narrative together. All of those things you're going to do because you want to make a great impression, but you've already been chosen.
mm,
And so please remember that as a baseline. You've been chosen. And so if I have done the same as you, Jawan. I have sat in those rooms, and it was like I did a loop process, one right after another, in which I had to interview. And it is tough. And
mm,
so the only thing I can say is acquaint yourself with the material. Like,
mm,
so acquaint yourself with what it is that you bring to the table and
mm,
what they need at the table. So
mm,
acquaint yourself with those things. And we all have the ability nowadays to look up like questions. I love the star format. And I put the star format into an Excel spreadsheet. I go down the list, and well, I go to and Google, tell me the top 20 behavioral questions in an interview.
mm,
I get them, I put them down the first column, all the questions, and then going across the top row, I write, S for the star. What's that? Situation, task,
mm,
action, result. And
mm,
I actually like do it myself, because a lot of times you have to remember all the things that you've done, like, and
mm,
touched. And so what happens is it gives me an opportunity to bring all the things that I've done to my frontal lobe. And
mm,
so answering those questions allows me to say, like, I did this marketing campaign, and it was a situation in which the leader wanted to now understand how to bring back into the fold the people who left us, and
mm,
they used to be $1 million partners, like, and they're now gone. So we need to figure out, what is it that we need to do in order to bring them back. That's the situation,
mm,
and then the task, and then the action, the result. So I literally do that all the way down for the top 20 behavioral questions. And that's how I get ready for interviews. So that what's happening is you're reacquainting yourself with all of the things that you did, and they
mm,
are sitting in your mind, and you are ready to access. And that is who you are. That is what you have done. And so that is what you're bringing to the table when you have an opportunity to meet the parents.
mm, mm. Meet the parents. That that is such an interesting way to look at it. So, in your role as employee experience manager, and that was very fascinating to me actually.
Good.
What exactly is that?
It is, it's a new discipline. And so it's a new discipline that sits inside of human resources a lot of times. And it is really technology companies that have embraced it the most. But employee experience is just the activity of making the employees happy. Because if you have happy employees, well, if you have happily engaged employees, they tend to produce more and impact your bottom line more positively. So I don't know if you've ever heard that it's cheaper to keep them. You heard that song? Maybe your mom and dad know that song. It's an old song, but it's cheaper to keep them. And that means that the if you are in every time an organization has to replace someone, I think it costs, like, it's like 2 times their salary or something like that,
Mm,
to get somebody new, train them up, and get them back to where, Jawan might have been.
mm,
So it's really cheaper to keep them. And
mm,
so when you think about the work of ensuring people are engaged and ensuring people have what it is that they need in order to contribute at the highest levels, that takes and these is HR kind of are thinking about it in a broader way,
mm,
but it takes somebody to be thinking about I call it the other half. So a lot of times companies do a lot of investing in there's 6 stages of the employee life cycle. So it's a attract, recruit, onboard. And everybody is kind of acquainted with that. And that's kind of where your thoughts are like, yeah, 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 all that makes sense. And you probably see at a lot of companies that there are a lot of people that support those 3 stages of the employee life cycle. But there are 3 more. um, and that is develop, reward, and transition.
mm,
So a lot of times the development that companies invest in, and I bet you probably know this one, is that they give you learning. right?
mm,
So you probably have a platform in which you can go in to learn about lots of different things. And so learning is almost always one that companies can easily invest in to develop their employees. Well, it's not just being able to earn the latest certification that is going to keep you feeling like you're doing meaningful work.
mm,
And but it's some other things too. And, and so now companies are coming along and they are recognizing that we probably need to make that second half of the experience as robust as the first half.
mm,
And so employee experience is essentially in like a team of folks or a person that is tuned into the full scope of the employee life cycle and how an employee experiences a brand.
mm,
And so, like, all the way from attraction to transition, like, what
mm,
is that experience like? And building it and actually creating a strategy for it. So, like, I call it designing an employee experience with the same care and robust dedication that you would a customer experience. See,
mm,
companies know, right, that if I treat this customer right, they're going to stay loyal.
mm,
Have that same application to your employees.
mm. That is very fascinating.
Mhm.
And one interesting bit to me, because of course it's a little off track for like our conversation, but still something I'm looking to get your perspective on.
Okay,
So
go for
one
it.
of the this kind of like mindset I think has been like very pervasive in tech specifically over the
Mhm.
last, I probably say at least as long as I've known tech. But I do feel something shifting though, where you see CEOs coming against employees and like, saying things that typically would be like morale damaging, talking about
Mhm.
we're laying off underperformers, we're doing this, we're doing that. How do you see that? I guess on a personal level, like is that the right way to do it, or what are they doing wrong?
I Okay, so I keep bringing things back to like real life. And like being in a company is like being in a family.
Hmm,
And I let's just say the CEO is the father.
hmm,
And all year long you all were saving money to go to Disney World, and
hmm,
everybody was excited about it. Everybody was pitching in, and I'm doing this as a little kid and my sister's doing this as a little kid cuz we going to Disney World. But
hmm,
then daddy gets laid off.
hmm,
And now we are no longer going to Disney World in July like we planned.
hmm,
That is a real thing. And so I think companies, just like a father in the family structure, has to be able to, at the same time as delivering that bad news, he has to be able to insert hope and
hmm,
develop the pathway for us to get back to Disney World.
hmm,
And when it's not taken into consideration in that way, it is a miss. So
hmm,
now you have, back to my little, like scenario, you have kids walking around talking about, we were supposed to go to Disney World and now we're not.
hmm,
Instead of, that's the morale.
hmm,
Instead of daddy got laid off and we can't go to Disney World in July, but
hmm,
he created a bottle that's sitting on the, in the kitchen now. And every time we get some change, we have to throw it in there because we got like a strategy for getting back to Disney World.
hmm.
So
Or maybe a different destination, maybe
yeah,
Kalahari or something
right.
else. Maybe not Disney.
Yeah, or daddy said that instead of going to Disney World in July, what we're going to do instead is go on the fishing trip that's down the street.
Mm,
So, what I think is happening, so I use that as an example because a lot of time I think like there is some disconnection between the humanity and um, the bottom line.
mm,
Like it's people.
mm,
And I think there is an opportunity, even though like you're delivering something that's bad or we have to go into a different direction,
mm,
there is an opportunity to be to do things in a humane way.
mm,
I really believe so. I have my degree is in communications. Writing comes very easy for me.
mm,
The thing that I always work with leaders to do first is let's write this thing down. Like,
mm,
what is this thing that you have to do, deliver? Let us frame it. Let us bring people in as much as we can into the strategy. Let us bring people in as much as we can to the decision making. And I think that a lot of times, um, leaders might miss the opportunity to allow the people that they have brought into the fold to be a part of the solution.
mm,
I think that is such a missing thing. And I'll tell you, there's a company that I cannot remember the name of it right now, but I might have to email it to you and you might have to put it in the notes because it's so good. It's a company that the CEO was going to have to lay off like a lot of people in the company, and instead the people it was a small tech company. I think it might have been I feel like it was under 1,500 people. It was a small tech company. The people decided that we will give up a portion of our salary, and the CEO decided to take a smaller salary.
mm,
That in and of itself gave him, now he's got people that is riding this out with him,
mm.
like everybody
Extremely motivated.
motivated because they are in on the solution. If we're going to go down, we're going to go down together. If we're going to thrive, we're going to thrive together. And so that company didn't go down. He was
Mm,
able, I think, to raise up people's salary,
mm,
where everybody makes $70,000 walking in the door or something like that. And not only that, his people got together and bought him his dream car,
wow.
the CEO.
That is so inspirational.
Yes. And so I just feel like, I know the bigger a company is, the less nimble it is. But I do believe there can be solutions that if the people that you trust that are inside and they have gone through all of that to get here. So like you described, like the 3, 4, 5 people you have to interview with, they must have something, right? They must have some stuff. They must know some stuff. We're all in here. And so I love the idea of turning to the people that are solutioning your greatest product that's about to roll out, and maybe solution, the other things too that impact them.
That is such a great perspective, and I think the sad part of what the bigger problem is, in my view, is that you used to hear people process profits. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's kind of like flipped on his head now. That's the real sad part, right? Is that you see a lot of companies, for example, like it was understandable. Companies hired a lot, they overhired in
Mm-hmm.
2021. You're seeing some of that cut back, which is interesting. But you then started to see layoffs that weren't specifically driven by overhiring. Like these companies were in like good positions. They were making more money than they ever made, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they still continue to lay off people because they wanted to figure out ways to do more with less. Even that is not so bad. But I
Mm-hmm.
think the really interesting part is, laying off people on the US side and then offshoring a lot of those jobs to where I almost, and the interesting thing to me is like we see the cycle all the time, right? Where, it was car manufacturing. And
Mm-hmm.
now you see
Oh, yeah.
how so many foreign brands are dominating in
Mm-hmm.
the American market, and the American car companies are struggling all over, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because in the one end, they're doing things to benefit them, but at the end of the day, those companies are hurting right now
Mm-hmm.
because when you invest in people, the people build technology. That technology serves you in the long term. So
Yes.
you build, people can actually be a competitive advantage. But think about it. I wonder like how many people could have worked in the auto industry, for example, but because those opportunities are not there, they've taken those talents and skills elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
While the people in those other places are now developing those talents and skills, and we're now losing, not just as they're not losing as a company or even a sector, it's losing as the whole country because companies decided to make selfish decisions and everybody is paying for it. And I see that happening now in tech as well, which is really sad, right? Right, where
Mm-hmm.
people are thinking, oh, you know what, we can get, maybe cost savings by cutting jobs here and moving them overseas. But what you get is, if like the tech market right now, the job market is completely blown out of water, if you like, right? Because a lot of people struggling to find jobs and things like that. And I feel we're losing that advantage, which is very interesting. So I do really appreciate that breakdown of even how you said it. It's like how are we bringing humanity back into it? How are you thinking
Mm-hmm.
about this holistically?
Yeah.
How are companies not just looking at it as numbers, X's and O's? Because ultimately, I understand where CEO is coming from, right? I want to
Mm-hmm.
post the best numbers. So how can I massage these things to come out with that? But I think it's bigger than that, right? And if you build a mission around it, I think it can come out better. I don't like to shout out specific companies, but to give an example, I think Apple did that, right? They were almost like, you know what? During the thing, we're not going to hire any new people, but we're also not going to lay off people as
Mm-hmm.
well. And they were able to ride out that storm of 2022, 2023. And I remember, like, I think there was some news about them cutting Apple cars. I don't know if that's true or not. But
Ooh.
then I think they were going to do something around that, but they didn't
Uh-huh.
end up doing it. And guess what? They found a way to kind of like reorg the people who were working on the project to even still stay within the company. And I think that should be a model, right? Where,
Solution.
to use your solution,
Mm-hmm.
maybe we don't go to Disney, maybe we don't go to Disneyland,
Yeah.
and maybe we don't get ice cream, right?
Yes.
But we figured out a way to still come out to a destination to still keep the family together, you know.
That's it. I really believe that if people I think like a lot of times we anoint leaders,
Hmm.
but they're people just like us. And
Hmm.
I like when I have an opportunity to communicate with leaders, I really try to talk in the way of a family structure because
Hmm.
I'll be dang, every single one of us have been children if we
Hmm.
have not yet been parents. We at
Hmm.
least have been children and we have sat inside of a family structure, be it
Hmm.
positive or negative. And so people commonly have the ability to think about things from that perspective. And if you can kind of basically understand like impact, you can do it through the lens of a family, like
Hmm.
like a person, like you understand impact. You understand maybe the opportunity to turn to your left and right and say, let's solve this together or let's figure this out differently
Hmm.
because you're an important part of this.
Hmm.
And then if you have to, rejig the strategy, I think it's so important to be able to, talk to the people at the top, the other trusted people that are
Hmm.
in the room with you to somehow help you solution. I just really believe you'd be surprised. You would
Hmm.
just be surprised. So I have not yet on a CEO level be able to write any ships. But on a people manager level, just really having conversations around the power that does lie within your fingertips and
Hmm.
how you can do it in the most judicious fashion, like just a
Hmm.
lot of different things. Like I said, we talked about tech is a very high paced environment. It's a lot of things happening all the time.
Hmm.
I one of my in one of my roles, I used to sit on the team calls
Hmm.
And afterwards, I would send an email to the leader and say, I think you could have said this instead. Or
Hmm.
next time, try saying it like this, and you can probably gain greater adoption.
Hmm.
Yeah, and but it has to be a leader that knows that he perfection does not exist within him or her. Like
Hmm.
there's always an opportunity for growth and for a different point of view.
Hmm.
And I think that as a baseline, going back to relationships,
Hmm.
right? Because I can't do that with a leader that I don't have a relationship
Relationship with.
with.
Hmm.
Yes, I have to establish a relationship so that now I can say, Jawan, when you tell people that you don't care, maybe it's a different way to say that. Maybe you can say it, like, let's table that so that I can investigate so we can figure out how much energy we're going to put towards that.
Hmm.
That
Hmm.
is different from saying to somebody in a big old room that you have to motivate that you don't care.
Because it's like they just take that same attitude, like I don't either.
Yeah, I don't either. Exactly. I don't care either. But I think like the what you shared about the outsourcing
Hmm.
companies are doing and
Hmm. Hmm.
offshoring a lot.
Hmm.
I think like the word that like I try to like center myself around is divesting.
Hmm.
So many companies are divesting a lot of times of their original purpose. And so when you talked about those
Hmm.
four P's just now, I also have four P's, and my four P's, it starts with the purpose at the top.
Hmm.
So you get the purpose, the people, I forgot the other P, and then the profits.
Hmm. Process.
Yeah, okay. So like it's like the think about it cyclical,
Hmm.
but it has to start with a purpose. And so if you can articulate like what the purpose is, and your purpose is really down to we gonna make the most money at whatever
Cost.
whatever cost necessary, whatever decisions necessary. Our purpose is to make the most money possible. Now what happens is that if you what you're doing is that you're allowing people to ladder on to your purpose. But
Hmm.
if your purpose is something like we want to help make an impact in the city of I live in Durham, the city of Durham, if that's your purpose, and then now you coming and you telling me that we moving the whole operation to Nashville, well then dang it, that's not the purpose I signed up for.
Hmm.
So hell, I think like for companies, like what they can do a lot of times is be very clear about their company mission. And then there's an exercise that we do internally through employee experience. It's called mission mapping.
Hmm.
So you literally have the team
Hmm.
figure out their mission
Hmm.
and their efforts therefrom.
Hmm.
And now everybody is coalescing around that. So
Hmm.
if your mission is to get to the moon in 5 years, we are all coalescing around it, and we all know the piece of the pie that we have to make this happen.
Hmm.
It makes your work more meaningful, and it makes it clear like this is my piece of it. If we go into the moon in 5 years, then my job in it is that this is all I can do. I'm gonna write down all the stuff that the people say that we're gonna do. That's gonna be my contribution. So
Hmm.
but in whatever it is, like you understand where you fit in this. And I think it would behoove companies to be clear about that. And if the mission is shifting
Hmm.
in the purpose, let's do that. If the purpose becomes to make the most money, and we're gonna do that by instituting these 4, 5, 6, 7 things, then that's what we have to know, understand, and do. Because um, if you don't tell me we're not going to Disney World and I done pack my bags and I wake up July 3rd when you said we were going, and now I'm disappointed because what happened?
Hmm. Hmm. So having clear communication is definitely very important. So we're if you're just joining us, this is Working in Tech. We're having an amazing conversation with Shantell. We're actually close to wrapping it up now, but I have a few more questions. And if you have any questions, drop them in the chat. So two quick questions. One
Okay.
is for employee experience management, what is it a field that people should look into? And then two, what is the earning potential for that role specifically?
I do think it's something that people should look into. Like it depends. The earning potential has variability based, of course, on the size of the company. So 1,500 size company, different from a 500, different from 800,000. So I think the amount kind of exists inside of that. But if you're going to research, I would say research HR inside of that particular size company because employee experience is right on par with, say, a HR business partner.
Mm,
So it's when you think about the amount of money there is to earn. So if you were to look it up, do it from that perspective. I do think I said in the beginning that it is a burgeoning kind of practice. I don't find like 100 jobs a day. My children challenge me to do that. Like I think you should apply to like $100 a day. I'm like, there aren't 100 jobs. So I think that you must. It's a burgeoning practice, and
mm,
so it's there is not a lot. Let's just say as much as say software development. You're probably not going
mm,
to find as many employee experience as you do software development,
mm,
but there are some terms that can maybe help you. There is employee engagement.
mm,
There is talent management.
mm,
Employee experience, I feel like, is newer. I actually got into employee experience through D&I.
mm,
I became first a D&I practitioner. So I said earlier on that I was a marketer first. So for the first 20 plus years of my career, I was a marketer in tech. But then the people stuff, I was doing all of the mentoring and all of that after hours. And I'm like, like this people thing, I think I got something here.
mm,
And someone, one of my mentors, like coached me into what
mm,
could be possible.
mm,
And it was D&I. So D&I was my first step into people work out of product work, I call it.
mm,
Yeah.
mm.
Mhm.
That's so important.
Yeah.
That's so again, just to give I don't want to put you on the spot by asking for numbers, but what does that look like? Just as a range, right? Just to give people a sense of it.
I see somewhere between 75 and 150 on when I look at job descriptions.
Got it. Got it.
Hmm.
Got it. So it's definitely a role that has six-figure potential. So if that's what
Oh,
you're looking for in
yeah.
tech, definitely check out employee experience.
It does. Yep, it does.
So so for any new person, because again, a large number of people who follow the podcast, watch my content, there are people who are outside of tech looking to get in. What
Hmm.
one piece of advice, that you can give them to help them succeed in their journey?
I would tell them to um, like this is people work. I think it's hard work. I call it hard work because I think you have to be very interested in the wanting people to have a better workplace experience. Like
Mm,
you really, really do. And
mm,
so it's hard work first.
mm,
And so if you know that you're oriented towards it, and one of the things that I realized that my orientation towards it where it lied is because I was always doing the ERGs, I
mm,
was always mentoring. I was always the one doing that stuff, like trying to
mm,
find a place to rest
mm,
my interest that came very naturally. I was just doing it.
mm,
And so as I think about like if you know it's for you.
Mm,
I would say that peopling, you have to have had an indication all of your life that 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 this is a place for you, because you hear hard conversations, you are driving through trying to write things that are happening to people. It's
mm,
different from hearing what's happening in the knock.
mm,
Like, it's a different experience than hearing like from a person that it's hard for me to come into the office because I have to take medicine that has to be refrigerated like all the time,
mm,
and I can't really do a return to office because I have to have this medicine to keep myself alive.
mm,
Like, and when I think about the work of an employee experience person, you're advocating when you cannot get the real life, like that scenario I just gave you. That's a real
mm,
scenario. But right inside, every employee has an opportunity when they fill out their employee satisfaction survey. Most companies is once a year. You fill out that employee satisfaction survey. There are people in HR who are very interested in the outputs. That is
mm,
your opportunity to voice what you think and feel about what's going on inside of your organization.
mm,
So fill it out.
mm,
And then as organizations grow,
mhm,
then hopefully they employ people like me whose sole job is to build a strategy
mm,
that responds to really that output.
mm, mm. Yeah, that's really powerful.
Mhm.
So we're literally at the end now, and this is the opportunity to say any last words, shout out anyone that you want to shout out, and then maybe give him one last piece of advice if you want.
Okay, here's my shout out. Tomorrow is Employee Appreciation Day. It's a an observance that's kind of like Bosses Day.
Mm,
And so Employee Appreciation Day is Friday, March 7th.
mm,
Do something for your employees to let
mm.
them know that you appreciate them. I have some really good tips on my website. I'm gonna have to give it to you, but it's
Yeah,
iosconsults.com/employee dash appreciation dash day. If everybody got that, cool.
we'll
But
put it in, we'll put it in in the
I
description.
cool. I have a toolkit on there to help you. Simply, celebrate your employee. I'm really digging. I'm really passionate about making workplaces better for the
Mm,
people who have to participate in them, because
mm,
we spend 40% of our lives working.
mm. That is such an important and interesting stat to put out to actually bring this to an end. Thank you so much for joining. This has been really, really great. On the Working in Tech podcast, one of the things that we try to do is bring different people in tech just to highlight, the fact that they're just almost endless possibilities, if you like, in terms of the different roles, the different skill sets, and, it's also interesting that, you have such a breadth of experience, right? That you're able to share and how you've kind of like navigated through different like career periods and transitions, which I think is also important because a lot
Mhm.
of people who watch, the Working in Tech podcast are career transitioners. But I think there's a message in there that even the first tech job that you choose doesn't have to be your final tech job. There's always opportunity to pivot and make
Right.
changes and grow. Uh,
Mhm.
so that's such a really important part, and I really want to thank you for sharing that perspective. For everybody watching, this has been another episode of the Working in Tech. We do this once every week on a Thursday. So catch another episode with another amazing guest next week, where we'll be discussing another tech role, different tips about how to navigate it. But that's it for tonight. I have a new video coming out, if not this weekend, maybe next Monday. So go check it out on how to choose your tech job based on your personality and how to give yourself an unfair advantage. Check out the
Mhm.
book, check out the links we'll be dropping in the description. and we'll see you on the next episode. Have a good night.